Okay, so we've been auditing our lives and we looked at the title that we have of faith and the law of words. But today we're going to address the elephant in the room, which is maturity. So 1 Corinthians 13:11 says, "When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things." Now let's be honest. What is a child? A child speaks first, thinks later. And anyone who has kids knows that's true. They say whatever comes to their mind and it just goes out. Now, how many of you have ever said something and immediately wanted to reach out and grab those words and put it back in your mouth? Has that happened to anybody? Anybody who does not raise their hand is lying. So I'm going to ask again, how many of you have said something and immediately wanted to put them back into their mouth? Let's see a show of hands. Thank you. So, we've all been there. We've all said things that, well, in the heat of the moment, we just throw them out there. Makes us feel good. It hurt somebody. I got them back. But maturity is the exact opposite. An adult thinks first and evaluates and then, and only then, decides if it's profitable to speak. So last week we saw 1 Corinthians 10:23, and it said, I have the right to do anything. That's what we say. I have the right. I'm entitled. It's me. I'm that way. 1 Corinthians reminds us not everything is beneficial. Not everything is profitable. But let's get back to 1 Corinthians 13:11. Notice the order of the verse. Logically, you'd think it says, when I put childish things away, I became a man. But it doesn't. What it says is, when I became a man, I put away childish things. That means maturity is a decision that we all make. Now, we discussed the root of decision is incision, to cut. You don't just try to grow up, you make a cut in your life. You cut the chaos out of your life. Being a man or a woman in the kingdom isn't about your age or about your gender. It's the title of maturity. Wear it proudly. It means you have made the incision. You have cut away the childish reactivity, and you have finally become a reliable adult. Amen?
Amen.
Now, last week we established that your life is a ship and your tongue is the rudder. And if you are sinking in your finances or your marriage, stop blaming the wind and stop blaming God for this and start being honest with yourself. If you're steering your own ship into the storm with your own vocabulary, think about the rudder. Think about la pala del timón, the blade beneath the water. Small, hidden, and underwater. And yet it dictates where the entire vessel goes. Your tongue is that hidden rudder. Now, let's look at Proverbs 10:11. The words of the godly are a life-giving foundation, life-giving fountain. The words of the wicked are fueled by violence. Your mouth is a well. What kind of water are you serving? Now you have two choices. A well of clean, life-giving water or a well of dark, murky, stagnant water. Now I have a question for you. Which one would you choose? Take a look up at the screen. If I gave you a glass of dark, murky, dirty water from a polluted well, would you drink it?
No.
Of course not. You know it would bring you infirmity. So why are you speaking it? Every time you gossip, every time you criticize, every time you're talking negativity, that's what you're serving. And then you're surprised when people won't drink it. I had an employee who seemed to have all the qualifications for an executive position. Yet about 2 weeks after he was hired, things in his department started to go south. Co-workers seemed to start having problems. There was bickering. People didn't meet their goals. Deadlines didn't get met. And the general atmosphere, when you walk into a room and you feel it, and you could feel the strife. You would go in there and it just didn't feel right. It started to change because we always competed. Every year we competed for the award of a happy place to work. That's an actual award, happy place to work. And it went from a happy place to a stressful place. It really did. Complaints grew until we saw that his strategy was to cause strife amongst his co-workers so he would come out to be the hero. And when we sat him down to let him go, he looked at me and asked, why? He didn't get it. He thought he was a manipulator, and he thought that strategy was actually good. And he didn't realize that it was a confession of his own insecurity. He didn't build people up. He tried to break them down in order for him to look good. It was actually poison, and he was building a kingdom based on dark water. And that dark water is called strife. He didn't realize that in the kingdom, you don't build your own influence by poisoning someone else's well. Proverbs 26:27 says, whoever digs a pit will fall into it. And if someone rolls a stone, it will roll right back on them. And he spent his time digging pits for his team, never realizing that he was just preparing his own grave. And you cannot lead others to life if your own mouth is a well of death. And I know the words are strong, but they're true. You cannot lead others to life in your own mouth if your own mouth is a well of death. He was still stuck in that childish cycle of speaking first and thinking later, manipulating and tearing down to feed his own ego. And he didn't have a leadership problem, he had a maturity problem. He treated people like stepping stones, and in the end, he didn't just lose a job, he lost his reputation because the fruit of his tongue eventually became the fruit of his life. So, I want you to take a look at your own workplace, at your own family, at your own group of friends. Are you trying to be the hero by stirring up the mud? Because I promise you, you will eventually have to drink from the well you are currently polluting. Amen?
Amen.
So if you're isolated, audit your well. Are you serving life? Or are you serving infirmity? How many people do you have around you? How many people are supporting you? That's a good audit. as to where you're at with your well. Amen?
Amen.
Harry mentioned the Diderot effect at the beginning of the sermon, which is basically one positive change triggers a chain reaction. This was actually named after the philosopher Diderot, who was given a beautiful new robe, and suddenly, because his robe was so beautiful, he started seeing everything around him ugly. So he started changing everything around him. I'm not going to give the end of the story. You can look it up because it's not that great. But the whole point is that one little change can start a chain reaction. When you want to get fit, you don't change your physique from one day to another. You first get a gym membership, and then you start going, and then you start meeting people, and those people influence what you expect from yourself. And then it goes on, and 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, you start seeing changes, and you go, wow, right? Your faith works the same way. When you make the decision to cut everything that does not go with your faith out, to change your environment, the rest follows. You are the architect. So if your will is dirty, look at your input. Now, make a personal audit. You don't have to answer, especially if the one sitting next to you is the cause of this, but just take a look at the screen and be honest. What looks more like you? What looks more like your environment? I want you to audit your inputs. If your tongue is a dark well, it's because you are digesting dark waters. So what are you digesting? What music are you listening to? What books are you reading? What videos, magazines, and movies are you seeing? If you follow voices that speak anxiety on social media, there's a really quick way to change that. There's a button that says unfollow. Stop listening to those voices. If the content you consume makes you bitter, cut it out. If your friends are only feeding you strife, block them. And I say this from experience. I mean, I used to have like over 100,000 followers. And I had people who would just write to share strife. That's it. Until one day I said, enough is enough. And I just started blocking. Because that's allowing yourself to be poisoned.
Amen.
And nobody deserves that. Amen?
Amen.
But what about you? Ooh. That doesn't sound so cool. What about you? If you are talking ill of your wife or husband with others, or even worse, you're letting others speak ill of your spouse, stop it immediately. Don't allow that to happen. That's the first step to losing your marriage. Amen?
Amen.
You can't go around speaking ill of others. If you don't like something, take it up with the person you're not in agreement with. You cannot serve life-giving water if you are constantly filling your well with mud. But pastor, you don't know the people I'm surrounded with. I don't know how to deal with them. Well, thankfully, there's this really good library that's called Bible, and it has a whole bunch of very good books, and within them it contains proper steps to follow. So in Matthew 18, 15 through 17, it gives us a process to actually take care of these kind of things. The first step is a private resolution. And it says, if another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offense. Many times, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, you may say something or do something and offend somebody, but it wasn't your intent. Maybe you were actually trying to do a good thing and it offended somebody, right? So chances are that if you go and speak to them privately, they'll probably just take it back and say, oops, I apologize. There was a day when there wasn't all this technology and there wasn't social media, and you would actually go face to face with somebody and say, hey, I messed up. I apologize. And if worse went to worse, you would just duke it out, and that was it. Now, if the person listens and apologizes, we're good. Second step, involving witnesses. If you are unsuccessful to take one or two others with you, go back again so that everything you say may be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. That's the second step. If that still doesn't work, then you involve leadership, you involve the church. If the person still refuses to listen, take your case to the church elders. Amen? It's that simple. It's right there. Black and white, printed up. So we don't really have to be creative about this. Now listen, there's a massive difference between a gossip monger and an ambassador. A gossip monger takes their grievances to everybody except the person involved. Now, I've had cases like this where they come up and say, so-and-so did this and that. And my first question is, have you taken it up with that person? Well, no, but you should know about this. That's gossip. You take it up with the person. A mature ambassador follows the law of Matthew 18. If you have a conflict, you don't go on Instagram and post vague status. You don't go to the break room and rally the troops against your coworker. No, you go to them privately. You have the mature, uncomfortable, face-to-face conversation. And if you cannot resolve it, then you bring a witness or a leader. That is not being a snitch. That is governance. It is a mature process of cutting out the rot before it kills the whole body. Amen?
Amen.
Watch your words. Watch your words. You say, I am impulsive and I can't help it. But God says, I have given you a spirit of power, love, and sound of mind. You say, I have to tell them off to prove I'm right. But God says a soft answer turns away wrath. You say, my words don't really matter. God says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Galatians 6, verse 9 says, let us, I'm sorry, but this is so powerful. Galatians 6, verse 9 says, let us not become weary of doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. If we do not give up. Perhaps today you are tired. Tired of fighting, tired of waiting, tired of getting up over and over and over again. Perhaps you have gone through hell, through sleepless nights, through tears that no one saw, through battles that almost left you without strength. But listen to this. God never promised that the road would be easy. What he did promise is that you would never walk alone. And if you are still here, it's not yet the end. If you are still here, if you woke up this morning, if you are here right now, it's because you are not through. The end has not come. You will get better. Your health will improve. Amen?
Amen.
And though I fall 1,000 times, I will return because God is still with me when all is lost, and he teaches me how to be reborn. And even if the world wants to defeat me, if his hand holds me and his voice still sustains me, I will remain standing once again because I have faith.
Amen.
Amen?
Amen.
The choice in your words is yours. Have faith. Believing and speaking. What is faith?
Believing and speaking.
What is faith?
Believing and speaking.
What is faith?
Believing and speaking.
Believing and speaking. Speak life. Amen?